Yo, what's up? Medkit here. And it's gotten to the point where the new offlaner can be announced any day now. Who can this be, you ask? Remember this from January? Yeah. Even though I voted for Quang, and he can both jungle and offlane, no other offlaner from the history of Paragon has ever posed such a prominent threat in the offlane than this hero. And his name is Wukong.
Tried my best just to catch a fucking smile, but for now I see myself ain't hitting the 35.
We'll talk about Wukong on another video, so let's talk about Greystone, since he's an offlaner that was in that community poll, and not to mention I already did a video about Quang. If you haven't already, check out that video. I don't know about you, but when I think of Greystone in Pred, I immediately think of this monstrosity of a combination. Because let's face it, what's worse than a hero with 2 lives? Well, technically 1.5, but you know what I mean. It's 3 lives. Actually, it's not really 3 lives. It's more like 2 lives because his ult gives him half and Phoenix gives about half. But I'm just strictly talking effective health here. But anyways, you get the point. This motherfucker is a third of a cat. I'll cut right to the chase. Greystone has one of the most iconic ultimates from OG Paragon.
One of the things that really stands out to me with Greystone is the ult.
Oh, of course.
The resurrection.
Of course, yeah.
And it's always the first thing that, if you're new and your first time playing it, it's like the first thing you comment on when you see it because it just looks so amazing.
Yeah.
The idea that he could resurrect and come back down, but like not resurrect in sort of a corrupt way, you know, rising from the grave, but more of descending from heaven and like returning from Valhalla.
Like your mission's not done
I mean?
yet.
Yeah, your mission's
like
not
you're still
done.
there to bring honor to the battle. Yeah, something like that.
That's really cool.
I like that, yeah.
Which, by the way, his ultimate is a passive ultimate, meaning when you press the button, nothing happens. His ult activates automatically, and Pred's consistency just doesn't allow for a passive to be an ultimate. Just look at the current roster of heroes. All of their ultimates are active abilities, and there's already a passive slot in Pred. Greystone's passive ultimate is obviously too valuable to be dumbed down into a normal passive slot. The only other heroes from Paragon with passive ultimates were Wukong and technically Zinx. Also, not to mention, his ultimate was an ability that you cannot stop from happening, which is why I'm gonna say first and foremost, it needs a rework. However, we can't change it too much. It needs to retain its visual spectacle and still cater towards the initial design goal for Greystone.
With Greystone, we had quite a few goals, actually. First and foremost, we wanted a hero that had pretty broad appeal, that, you know, would just get a lot of people interested in. Secondly, it needed to be something that new players could pick up and be comfortable with, and would be a good fit for their level of skill. But at the same time, and very importantly, we wanted it to be fun and interesting and still very useful in a skilled player's hands. Finding a kit that did all of that was the goal of this.
So the devs from Paragon wanted Greystone to be easy for beginners to pick up and learn, a tanky fighter that can dive the backline and be disruptive with his ultimate. So that's basically the challenge. How do you come up with a reworked ultimate which fundamentally looks and almost functions the same, is an active ability and not a passive ultimate, and is interruptible for gameplay readability? The biggest question of all, how can we make it so we can kill a Greystone who has his ult ready, who has his Phoenix crest ready, and not have him revive at all? Well, the good news is if Omida can figure out a way to make his ultimate an active ability, that'll solve the problem of interruptibility as well, since all active abilities are stoppable in a way. Same with the Phoenix crest situation. Pred has a few ways to stun or even silence a Greystone just when he's about to die, all while the player playing Greystone is gonna angrily spam the R and F button. I want to ask you a question. Which version of Greystone do you prefer? The version where he crashes back down and he does a huge knockup around the area? Or do you prefer the massive slow while he's turning to stone like the one he got from Monolith? Personally, I wouldn't mind either. Now, what about the rest of his kit? His Make Way and Assault the Gates are fine. Non-problematic abilities. Greystone had 2 iterations for his E. One was just a bonus health and armor, while the other, my preference, was he would deflect an auto attack every few seconds. That should be his passive, but there's one more thing I can add to this.
The fit for this guy seems to be a fighter laner. He comes out of the gate pretty pretty tanky with his E passive. If you don't know his E ability, as you level it up, it gives him physical armor and health.
A lot of like his playstyle was kind of, he would talk about the early game and wanting to like kind of get that tankiness, and really like getting to his ultimate seemed to be the goal, so he could start trying to make those plays with his team.
You get a big power spike when you hit that ultimate at level 5.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what his strategy was functionally like based around was the idea that he could go in, be tanky, get that engage off, and then just like in the early stages of the game be like a nuisance to the enemy team, like be there and like be disrupting fights and be in the thick of it, and then utilizing that ultimate to really like turn the tides of battle, like in an intense team fight or something, like using that ultimate to their advantage and like finding some depth in that kit, while as you get to late game being a threat and like being able to deal with people rather than just being the tanky guy who's like surviving and coming back to life, that you were actually in the fight and people have to deal with you. Like, and if they don't, like, that's going to be a mistake, and if they do deal with you, you provide some leeway for your team to work with.
So if Greystone can somehow get some bonus magical armor in his passive, that'll further help meet the design goals of an easy to use tanky fighter that likes to dive the backlines. This leaves his E for a brand new ability, and this is where we can get creative. Let's take a closer look at Greystone's identity.
As his kit started coming together, we thought, what's a good fit for this kind of guy? And, you know, knight in shining armor. Again, as far as that broad appeal goes, we wanted him to be kind of a good guy, you know, and thematic, you know, just a guy that anybody can get behind and root for, you know. You don't have to have that vibe where you're into the, you know, the bad boys or whatever.
Right.
With the mechanical design of the guy, we wanted him to have some tankiness to him.
Greystone is a melee fighter who never backs down from a challenge. An incredibly durable, skilled swordsman, Greystone takes the fight to his enemies and is capable of fighting even when his enemies can't. Use the fact that you can cheat death to your advantage. In teamfights, dive enemy carries with Assault the Gates and force enemies to burn their resources. Even if they manage to bring you down, Reforged will allow you to keep fighting even when your enemies can't.
We're adding more like pen scarred material on him, especially that Dragonheart. He pretty much make it by himself. When you guys see him play, you can see the back have a dragon head dangling over there. That's pretty much made by himself. Those are things, those elements we add into him, make him more like a version of what he is right now.
I don't know what his E should be, but I wanted to do something with a dragon. He has a whole ass dragon armor on his back. Why not make an ability themed around it? A dragon aura that does a burst of AoE damage around him, or gives him temporary magic armor and attack speed for a few seconds, and call it Dragonheart. I wouldn't recommend giving Greystone any move speed or crowd control in his new E. The reason is Greystone's main weakness really is that he sucks at chasing targets, and he's somewhat easy to catch. Then the gameplay loop would look like this. Activate Dragonheart, assault the gates, make way, keep fighting until you need to pop your ultimate, crest, or even both, etc, etc.
But that's enough out of me. I want to know what you think. Leave a comment below. Leave a like if you haven't already. It helps me make more content like this. If you like my content, consider subscribing. It helps me out a ton, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next Predecessor video. MedKit out.